I have quite a lot of handheld consoles in my collection, but not all of them are winners. Let's take a look at my 5 worst consoles that I own.
ハンドヘルドの執着
Now for this list of worst consoles, this is going to be specific to major console releases, not emulator consoles or, anything like that. Any kind of Chinese one. I could go for days with the wide variety of Supreme branded game consoles. This is just console releases from major manufacturers. This first console is probably going to get some people mad in the comments, but hey, it is what it is. Number 5 on the list, the Game Boy Micro. The Game Boy Micro was the end of the Game Boy line, and the Micro was the first Game Boy that didn't have backwards compatibility with previous Game Boys. Micro does have one of the best screens in the Game Boy, but I always find the colors are a bit too washed out for me. And then there is the issue of the screen. It's just too small. This of course came out at a time when having the smallest electronics possible was all the rage. I just love having a bigger screen now and generally default to playing something with a bigger screen. The way screens are going now, even the GBA is starting to feel small. The craziest thing about this device though is that it was released almost an entire year after the DS was released, which also couldn't play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. I know there is a lot of love for this device, and I do love it, but I rarely use it and have sold off several of mine because there are so many better options of Game Boy. Oh, and of course, on the discussion of having the smallest screen, Sega does what Nintendo don't. Number 4 on the list, the Nokia NGauge. First version. Nokia, the king of cell phones in the early 2000s. In 2007, before the iPhone launched, they had a 50% share of the market and are now a shell of what they once were. In 2003, they released what now seems like a no-brainer, a cell phone and a gaming system all in one. This is basically what every smartphone is now, except here we had physical buttons. I do like the NGauge QD, which is the smaller and second version of the NGauge. The first version just is confusing with the decisions an experienced electronics company made. The one that really stands out is that in order to switch games, you had to remove the battery cover and the battery. It was impossible to remove the games otherwise. And let's not forget side talking. The only way to use the device as a phone was to hold it sideways to your ear. And this spawned a few websites and still shows up in memes today. Nokia did learn from their mistakes. On the QD, the second version, they did add a card slot, and they also fixed the issue of the side talking by adding the earpiece to the front of the device. But for me, the first one is just a complete miss. Number 3, the WonderSwan. Another console that tried and failed against the Game Boy was the WonderSwan, which was actually designed by the designer of the Game Boy, Gunpei Yokoi. This console makes the list for me because since it was a Japanese-only device, there are only a handful of games you can play easily without being fluent in Japanese. I own all 3 versions of the console and I do appreciate a lot about it, but I just don't play it. A lot of the games are also available for it on the Game Boy, and in some cases are better on the Game Boy. Number 2, Game.com. No, the audio is not out of sync with the video. That's just how bad the Gamecom was. You may have heard other people talk about how bad the Gamecom was, but I cannot express to you enough just how utterly horrible this system is. The frame rate is so slow that it is nearly impossible to play. This is Sonic Jam playing at what appears to be 10 frames per second on a very blurry monochrome screen. I can't say enough bad things about this system. And yet, I also have a problem with Game.com. And that problem is that I own a lot of Game.com products. Don't ask me why. It's just one of those things. I keep running into them and I keep buying them. I guess the first step is admitting you have a problem. The second version on the left was the Game.com Pocket Pro. Supposed to be improved, but even at $10 they couldn't sell them. Believe it or not, the Gamecom could be connected to the internet, but like everything Gamecom, it was a mess. Actually had to be wired to a PC in order to connect to the internet. Not the best solution. Number 1, the worst of the bunch in every possible way, the Gizmondo. Hands down the biggest dumpster fire in the history of video games. There's so much about this system and the background of the company and the CEO that I can't even get into it in this. I'll leave some links in the description to other videos. It's a Windows CE powered device, and actually on paper it should have been a good system. Gizmondo also holds an interesting title of having all their release games also be their final games. And of course, none of these games were anything to write home about. Consider yourself lucky if you have a Gizmondo that still has a working battery. Mine do not, however there is a fix. Also, you'll notice the amount of lint attached to the device. This is a problem with the construction of the soft feel rubber. Basically all Gizmondos at this point are just disintegrating. Here's my other Gizmondo that is in horrific shape. The one fix to this is to use rubbing alcohol on it, but as you can see, it is just a sticky, gooey mess. There's really no reason to own this system, and that, of course, is why I have more than one. Everybody, thanks for watching. Leave me a comment in the description if there's another bad console that I missed on this list. Talk about it next time. See you later.